Imagine this, a weekend surrounded by nature's beauty in the heart of the English woodlands. A shimmering lake at sunset, movie night under the stars, with turmeric and black pepper popcorn in hand. World-renowned health advocate Barbara O'Neill live, empowering you to take back control of your health. Plus a powerhouse lineup of expert speakers, wellness workshops, and soul-nourishing experiences. This isn't just a festival, it's a movement, and you don't want to miss out. The Wellness Way Festival, where nature, knowledge, and community collide. Save the date, August the 8th to the 10th, 2025. Tickets are limited, so sign up to my newsletter on phillyjlay.com so you can be the first to know all the updates. Come and join the wellness revolution, because as you know, the doctor of your future is you.
So if you're cooking in chlorine, you're making tea or coffee with chlorine, you're having a shower or a bath in chlorinated water, it's going right in. But if somebody had ADHD, the first thing I'd do, I think, is I'd probably ask them about their sleep. But the first thing I would recommend they try would be the supplement magnesium, because it is the ultimate relaxant for every cell physically in the body. It serves the interests of Big Pharma to buy out the health companies, get them to perhaps change the recipe, dilute the quantity, so people can say, well, I tried XYZ supplement, I tried it for months and it didn't work. The body isn't seeking calories as food, particularly. What the body is seeking is nutrition, basic minerals, essential fats, essential minerals, and essential amino acids.
So excited and grateful that you're joining us at the Health Hub at CNM. Get down there, guys. Come and meet us. Come and pick our brains. Come and meet practitioners and come and start your journey, because, as you know by now, the doctor of your future is you. Welcome to The Wellness Way with me, Philly J. Lay, a layperson's guide to your natural health systems, your very own NHS. Hello, lovely people, and welcome to another episode of The Wellness Way. And today I've got one of my favourite ever guests back in the studio, Clive de Carle. The last episode, we talked extensively about vitamins and minerals. And if you haven't listened to that podcast, first of all, why not? And secondly, go back and listen. Clive, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. Wow, you caused a stir on our last episode. But I had a lot of questions in. We talked, as I said, about vitamins and minerals. That was our episode. But I've had a lot of questions in from people that want some answers to some very common illnesses that are cropping up and going, I think people were kind of very shocked at how, you talked about autoimmune disease and you said there's no such thing. It's just the body is lacking something. And everybody's got these illnesses. And there were three things that really stuck out to me that I'd like to ask you about. One is ADHD. I was contacted by a lot of people who have children on meds for that. I myself had a daughter on meds for ADHD. What would you recommend for that? What's the root cause?
Well, it didn't used to happen. It's new. So what is new? Well, vaccinations for children are new, relatively, compared to 100 years ago, say. Foods, highly processed foods with chemicals in are new. Everything from shampoo with chemicals, so many things that we either ingest or rub into our bodies or breathe in. Even the water isn't the pure water that it used to be. It's got chlorine in or fluoride in or whatever they might be adding. I mean, I was listening to Radio 4 briefly in the car.
Oh, why would you do that?
Yeah. And this doctor was on talking about the disease of obesity.
Oh, for God's sake, no.
Yeah, how is it a disease? Do you catch it? Oh, my God, I've got the obesity bug, I can't stop eating. Or is it the addictive nature of the chemicals that the companies deliberately put in a lot of the processed foods? And I think, there's a lot of addiction there, which is deliberately contrived by the food manufacturers to get you hooked. And the drug manufacturers then capitalize on that by producing the drug to get you off the drugs that the food companies put in. I mean, it's a self-feeding machine.
It is indeedy. So going clean is where you would start on ADHD. You mentioned water there. Now, I know that you did a fascinating experiment with water, but I'm pretty sure this was you, Clive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had cups of water from the tap and you put the drops in, the chloride drops from a swimming pool. Tell us what you did.
Exactly. So 3 identical glasses of water, just tap water, with chlorine in as it all is. And the first glass, I just put some chlorine indicator drops in, the type that tell you you've got enough chlorine in your swimming pool to be safe. And the water goes green, so the presence of chlorine. The second one, I put my fingers in for 5 seconds and pulled them out, put in the chlorine indicator drops, and somehow the chlorine had disappeared into my fingers, it seemed, because it didn't go green. The third glass, I put a little slice of raw potato in, this time for just 3 seconds, and pulled it out, put in the chlorine indicator drops. Again, it didn't go green, so the chlorine had gone somewhere, presumably into the potato. So if you're cooking in chlorine, you're making tea or coffee with chlorine, you're having a shower or a bath in chlorinated water, it's going right in. People forget that they rub some cream on their hand and it disappears. Well, it's gone in, hasn't it? Probably gone into the bloodstream, probably gone into the brain, maybe. People are exposing themselves to all sorts of materials that aren't doing them any good. But if somebody had ADHD, the first thing I'd do, I think, is I'd probably ask them about their sleep. How are you sleeping? Are you sleeping well? Hopefully their answer is yes. But the first thing I would recommend they try would be the supplement magnesium, because it is the ultimate relaxant for every cell physically in the body. And it's what they use in the emergency room sometimes. If somebody's having a heart attack, they'll probably inject them with magnesium sulfate, that's Epsom salts, one of the water-soluble versions, and it can stop a heart attack in seconds because it just relaxes the heart and the arteries enough that the heart attack can stop.
Now, magnesium is quite a complicated subject. I found it very complicated when I started my healing journey because there are so many different types of magnesium. And the ones that you buy, I was going to name a shop, but I won't do that, on the high street, they're predominantly rubbish, aren't they? Just crap.
Well, unfortunately, the high street supplements, like you might get in a supermarket or a chain of stores, usually they happen to sell the cheapest variety. So you can put legally magnesium in big letters on the labeling, but it doesn't mean it's effective. It doesn't mean it's bioavailable. In other words, that the body can actually absorb it and utilize it. So bearing in mind that a lot of these companies have links to Big Pharma, it serves the interests of Big Pharma to buy out the health companies, get them to perhaps change the recipe, dilute the quantity, put in less favorable ingredients, so people can say, well, I tried XYZ supplement, I tried it for months and it didn't work. But often, let's say, take magnesium as an example, most brands recommend on the label, take 1 or 2 capsules a day. And the capsules often vary from, let's say, 300 milligrams up to maybe 700 milligrams. So with the 300 milligram ones, if you took 1 a day, that would be, in my opinion, something like 1/10 of what you need. If you take 2, well, maybe you're up to 1/20 of what you probably need. And if you are the type of person who's got the magnesium symptoms like anxiety, headaches, worry, constipation, cramps, menstrual cramps or any type of cramp really, twitches, you're aching after exercise more than it would seem normal. There are so many symptoms. Every heart problem is usually a magnesium-based. Anything that involves you not being able to relax, not being able to just be yourself and be calm, and I think ADHD might be a good description of one version of that. It may be just simply you're low on magnesium because, the people with ADHD at school, for instance, they tend to be the natural leaders when they're outdoors. they lead the group, but inside in the confines of what, frankly, usually is very boring, they're teaching you stuff that's useless and you're never going to use. I mean, you probably learnt maybe trigonometry.
I don't remember. Do you know, I had this conversation with a girlfriend of mine because I said I never did science at school. And she looked at me and said, yes, you did. I went, no, I didn't. She said, it's, everybody has to do it. I went, no. So I went and found it was O-levels then, my O-level slip of paper. And I did indeed sit a science O-level. I have no recollection of it whatsoever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So
I can't remember who my teacher was, nothing. I hated it. Now, the irony is that I love it, but I love the new science that is coming in. And we're going to get to that later because, biology is something, quite honestly, we're taught in school. It's a lie, isn't it?
Well, everything we're taught at school is a lie,
Yes.
as far as I can tell.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's a good starting point for ADHD. The other one I had a lot of people ask me about was arthritis.
Well, the same answer. I'm qualified in this one in the sense that 40 years ago I took an antibiotic, as you know, and became arthritic so badly that I ended up in hospital because I could no longer get dressed or walk or basic things.
And if you haven't listened to that podcast, I cannot tell you strongly enough to go and listen to it because your story, Clive, I mean, it wasn't just you ended up in hospital, you were bedridden for months. You couldn't get out of bed.
Oh, it wasn't quite that long, but yeah, one morning I couldn't get dressed. I couldn't get out of bed. If there hadn't been somebody in the house, I don't know what I would have done. I really don't know what I would have done. But the point is that although I took a number of supplements to reverse the arthritis, the big one, again, is magnesium, that same one, because the inflammation that you get with arthritis is partly to do with the buildup of calcium around the joints. And why does calcium build up? Well, the best natural calcium channel blocker is magnesium. The doctors believe it's a drug, but it's not. It's magnesium because magnesium dissolves calcium. So with most people with arthritis, they just take magnesium and things get a lot better, and they might notice it really rapidly, in hours or days. But the other ones that go with it maybe for some people, MSM sulfur. Sulfur is very rich in foods like eggs and liver, cruciferous vegetables, onions, garlic. But for some people, if they've got a serious issue, like arthritis, they may well want to supplement on top of maybe eating those foods. Or maybe when I mention those foods, those are the foods you don't happen to eat, But on the one level, we're all basically missing the same supplements. On another level, everybody is different. But MSM sulfur is very useful.
Talk to us about MSM because that is something that I only discovered about a year ago. It's a bit of a buzzword at the moment. Everybody in the natural field is talking about it. Can you explain it to us and what it does to the body?
Well, some 15 years ago, I interviewed a guy called McGeeon who claimed he provided the best sulfur in the world. And at that point, I was buying sulfur from a Canadian company who also claimed to be the best in the world, Opti. And I had it on my supplement website, and while it got a few mentions, nothing spectacular, then I switched to Patrick's version, and suddenly it became my number 2 bestseller. And how Patrick had found it was his son was diagnosed with the big C, and he wanted to find the answer for his son. And while MSM sulfur can be very useful in almost any circumstance, his intuition told him that that's what his son needed. And indeed, his son recovered completely, and he gave up his job. He was working in a hospital. He gave up his job to study sulfur and learn about it. And he started by showing me microscope pictures of what the sulfur should look like compared to what most brands actually did look like. And so I interviewed him several times, actually, and he explained to me how the big use for MSM is actually in the horse world. All the vets and horse people know that MSM sulfur can be fantastic for injury recovery for horses. Really, really well known. And It came originally as a waste product from the paper industry. The trees had this waste product which turned out to be MSM, and now it's not made, I don't think, quite as well as it used to be. However, it's still terribly effective, and it can help in many ways. It can help reduce inflammation. It can help reduce scar tissue. So, if somebody's had an accident or an operation or something, when they're put back together and after operation, people who've experienced this may know that sometimes you get what's called adhesions, where the various organs or bits of skin and so on internally stick together, and it's a problem. So doctors will say, oh, well, it's just one of those things, right? However, the health people might tell you a little differently. They might say, well, look, MSM sulfur dissolves scar tissue and reverts it back into normal cellular structure.
It's that powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. So whether it's an external scar or an internal scar, essentially you have proteins in your body that you don't want. Tumours are unwanted proteins, you might say. There are a number of them. And it's not just MSM sulfur that will do that, but proteolytic enzymes will do that. So an example of a proteolytic enzyme is something like serrapeptase, for example. There are a number of supplements that dissolve scar tissue. How they found serrapeptase was they were studying silkworms, and a silkworm just has a few seconds to get its way out of its pupae before some bird that's happily waiting, knowing is going to get them. And they couldn't figure out how in just a few seconds this hard pupae suddenly became porous or whatever, and the silkworm could come out of it and fly off, right, as a moth. And they realized it was excreting basically serrapeptase. So they made a synthetic version of serrapeptase, and as I say, it dissolves scar tissue. So if you've just eaten a meal with protein in, you don't want to take it then. If you did, which would also be fine, what it would do would, let's say you've just eaten a steak or something, heavy protein, maybe you don't digest steak very well, you could take a proteolytic enzyme like serrapeptase, and it would dissolve, it would help digest the protein-rich food for you, so it'd be much easier to digest. So in the supplement Digestive Enzymes, you'll always see generally proteolytic enzymes, and there's lipokinase. There are a number of different types. But
I must ask, actually, because as you said earlier, and we've both had the honour of working with Barbara O'Neill, and her book Self-Heal by Design, we are designed to be perfect. That being the case, why do we need digestive enzymes? Because the body should be able to digest the food that we're giving it if you're eating a good, clean, organic diet. But I know that a lot of people, and I spent a year of my life on digestive enzymes. Why do you need them?
Well, I don't believe our ancestors would have needed them. However, to get through a cold winter, for example, our ancestors would have been using a lot of materials that have been fermented or dried or preserved to get you through a cold winter. And there would be a lot of probiotic action there, including digestive enzymes, because, if you like, nature is doing some of that digesting. So I think our diet would have been very different. But I still, there are some fruits, for instance, that, not natural to England, but pineapple, papaya, two of the digestive enzymes come from those, because they are quite acidic and good at helping you digest stuff. But the important thing with a proteolytic enzyme is that if you take it, let's say, 2 hours after you've eaten, now, as there's no protein to digest, it will start digesting the scar tissue that you don't want. It will start digesting fibroids. Any part of you that is a protein that is unwanted, somehow the bodily mechanism is clever enough that it enables this conversion from, let's say, fibrotic tissue into normal cells again.
The body is quite remarkable, isn't it? I mean, it is just this lean, mean machine that knows exactly what to do. You mentioned earlier then about obesity being classed as a disease or an illness. Our Prime Minister in the UK, as this stands at the moment, has decided that injections can be given to anybody who is obese as a way of getting people back to work.
Is that part of the assisted dying program?
And also taking the winter fuel allowance. You know, you're going to get them one way.
Yeah, you get a free ice bath now.
You do. What would you say to people that are thinking about taking those injections to lose weight?
Don't. I mean, you know, the problem is that people are addicted to food, and the way that the food industry is supported by governments is that the poisoned food is subsidized while the organic growers are penalized. I think it's pretty much true to say. And so unfortunately, because people are being robbed blind by the government, a lot of people feel that they've got no choice except to eat the cheapest food they can possibly afford to feed the family with. And I mean, the statistics that I've heard about how many children are going hungry in England every day is, don't remember the number, but it's mind-boggling. Millions of children hungry in England, you know, the so-called...
It is ridiculous, but the problem with these highly, highly processed foods is that they fill you up for a moment, but there's no fibre in there. And so you will be hungry again very quickly, and you will want to eat again. And they are, you know, they spend billions of dollars making these foods addictive. And it's why ice cream was, you know, it was basically done on mother's milk. So 50% fat, 50% sugar. And that is hugely addictive. And once they discovered that, it's like, okay, what else can we do to make it addictive? And this is a problem that needs breaking.
I think one of the things that people don't generally understand is that the body isn't seeking calories as food, particularly. What the body is seeking is nutrition, basic minerals, essential fats, essential minerals, and essential amino acids. That's what fills up the body. It's not the quantity or the calorific value so much as once your body knows it's got enough of the basic materials it needs to be healthy, then you're full. So, you know, if you want to lose weight, you could eat the most densely nutritious food you can get your hands on. I mean, liver is reasonably inexpensive. If somebody liked chicken liver pate, for instance, you can get organic chicken livers really inexpensively if you can find them. Even Waitrose sells them if you ask them to. There's something, I don't know, a packet that I think would probably cost £2.50 or something, would probably make 4 meals, even though it's quite small. It's so dense, taste-wise, that you're full really quickly.
It's one of those foods that even as a child, I mean, I don't eat meat because I don't like the texture, but I have my bone broth. But I always struggled with liver as a child. I mean, I really did.
I hated it because they used to force it to me at school, and I wouldn't eat. I just did without lunch. However, that was like pig's liver or something, which I felt horrible. But bird liver, duck liver, chicken liver, I find absolutely fantastic if you know how to cook it right, which is dead easy.
I'm going to have to pass on that one.
Yeah, that's all right.
But if you do eat it, then you're right. It is something very cheap. And when I put, bone broth back into my diet, because I knew my body was lacking the nutrients that I could get from the bones.
Yeah.
And when I put it in, my butchers near me, they give them to you for free as a waste product and ask you to put £1 in the charity box next to it. I buy mine from Riverford because I want organic and I can't guarantee that they are organic from the butchers. Again, they're you get a bag for just over £3 and there are 3-4 carcasses in there. It's unbelievably cheap way of supplementing your diet with really good organic food.
Well, exactly. I mean, last night somebody came over who'd just been to the dentist and couldn't eat anything solid. So I happened to have a squash or a pumpkin or something, a squash in the fridge, which had been sitting there for quite a while. They lasted an incredibly long length of time. really cheap at this time of year. They're virtually giving pumpkins and squashes away. And I cooked up an onion and added some herbs and a bit of spice and stuff, and just fried it for a little bit, and then added water and just cooked it for an hour or so. Cost very, very little, was hugely filling, very nutritious, and I shoved in some other bits and pieces of vegetables I had lying around. But the other way, of course, is to sprout. If let's say bean sprouts, you could go to the supermarket and buy a big packet of bean sprouts for a couple of quid or something. But if you took 5p's worth of mung beans and sprouted them, is it mung beans, I think, for bean sprouts? I think it is, one of those. I think it's mung beans. Within a few days, you've got 2 quid's worth for 5p, because all you got to do is get, let's say, a kiln in a jar or a jug or something, put in a few seeds, pour some water on, and at the end of the day, pour the water out, rinse the seeds, and leave them in the jar, maybe with a lid on, maybe not, doesn't really matter, and just keep them damp. Every day wash them.
Yeah.
And every day they'll get bigger and bigger. If it's a really hot sunny day, you might want to wash them twice in a day to keep them fresh. But within a few days, you've got bean sprouts, or you could sprout lentils.
Broccoli is a great one to eat, broccoli sprouts.
Yeah, lovely.
Which is so easy. You buy a big bag for a couple of quid that will last you a year.
Yeah.
And it has so many more nutrients in it than eating a head of broccoli, doesn't it?
Pea sprouts are delicious. Alfalfa sprouts. You can sprout chickpeas. Let's say you want to make some hummus. Ordinary dried chickpeas, well, if you soak them in water, they'll expand. Day 2, same procedure, wash them, leave them damp, but not in the water of the second and third day. It'll start sprouting. So at the end of, let's say, 4 days, you've now quadrupled the weight of your chickpeas. So, so it's a quarter of the price that it was. You've also increased the mineral and vitamin potency, I don't know, by 50 times maybe, because it's from dormant to alive. It might be more than that, it might be less, but it's significant.
It's a massive amount.
Absolutely massive. And so cheap eating. I mean, really, surprisingly, for 10p, let's say, if you add a clove of garlic or a bit of chili to it or something, you can actually have a very nutritious meal. It can be organic, because the difference between buying a few kilos of the organic chickpeas and non-organic isn't very much. Don't buy it in tins, already cooked. Just buy them dry and soak them. Same with lentils. I mean, one can eat really cheaply and very healthily.
I know when the British were in India during the last war, they named all of these things like chickpeas for chicks because they thought it was just food for chickens. They actually did not understand the process and the nutrients that these wonderful seeds have. And they're massive. I mean, they're a really big hitter. And we need to be supplementing and eating. We're not going to get what we used to get from the soil. So you have to top up with these foods. And that being the case, do you think it's imperative that everybody takes a vitamin? And what are the downsides of a multivitamin?
Well, I think the first thing is that nature can work alchemy, but the soils are depleted, so in many cases the plants will grow even though they're missing some key nutrients. I mean, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the classic fertilizers that the chemical companies put on. Many plants will grow and look fine on that, but doesn't mean they are healthy in any way, and doesn't mean they're going to be good for you.
No.
And the problem with buying, going back to where we were with, should you buy supermarket quality vitamins and minerals and oils, for instance? I mean, let's say cod liver oil. So everybody knows if you've got a fish product, you keep it in the fridge, you keep it cool. When at the fish factories they're gutting the fishes and so on, obviously they're going to take care to keep the fish cool, but are they going to take so much care about the livers and the byproducts that they're going to turn into fish oil for capsules?
Unlikely.
Well, it's perhaps doubtful, and loads of tests have been done on cod liver oil, and many of them are rancid. they may not taste rancid because it's just the beginning of rancidity, but they've maybe been, in a warehouse, in a shop, in heat, whereas with other fish products, you might keep them in the fridge. I'm not saying that fish products have to be kept in the fridge, but I observe and tests have shown that so many of the fish oil products are not safe. There are a couple of companies selling fermented fish products, Green Pastures being the famous one, and I would rate their products incredibly highly.
That's very good to know because, it is so important to get the right oils into your body. And, when we were children, I was given cod liver oil every Sunday, and it wasn't in a nice capsule. It was on a blooming spoon.
I know, horrible.
Oh.
But you see, cod liver oil, if it's processed well, tastes all right. So, because I was forced to do the same cod liver oil pain, and I don't think it was fresh, and I don't remember it coming out of the fridge. I remember it coming out of the cupboard.
Yeah, no, same here, actually.
Yes. So people didn't know what they were doing, were feeding rancid products, thinking they would, taste bad, but it's good for you,
Yeah.
However, the people from up north, the Scandinavians, they knew that fermented fish was the answer in cold winters because you had to get vitamin D somehow. And fermented fish, mushrooms and various other techniques, they could have enough vitamin D to get through the winter. And when our grandparents or parents forced vitamin D down our throats, they probably still had the hangover of, well, that's what you do in winter because of the vitamin D element in it. But personally, I like to eat fish. And I like fatty fish. I totally avoid farmed fish.
At all costs. Yeah. I didn't realise until very recently, I saw a TikTok on this. So I knew that, fish, when they're farmed, they're sprayed, especially salmon, and it's very cruel, and they're swimming around and they're kind of hunched over and they're covered in mites and bugs and everything, and they spray them almost on a daily basis, and it's one of the most toxic foods on the planet. What I didn't know was they actually inject them, and they have a process for getting all the baby fish out of the water and putting them through these machines where they're all injected against various, it's like the childhood vaccine schedule, but on fish. And I'm just like, what the actual fuck? I mean, that just put me off so badly. But if so fish is something that I have rarely because I will only have proper fish. If I want salmon, I will wait and have it less often and have wild salmon from the ocean. But then I will take a piece of salmon and I can make 4 dishes out of that. People but then you're not getting all the nutrients that you're spreading it out by making, like using a bit of it in a fish pie and a bit of it in a fish cake, and just having a smaller bit as kind of a fish steak. But it really is important. Do you think that you can get the same amount of nutrients from something like seaweed?
Well, you can eat quite a lot of fish, but you might be restricted on how much seaweed you actually want to intake.
But on capsules, I mean.
No, I wouldn't do it with capsules particularly. But with fish, I mean, perhaps the healthiest fish of the wild ones are going to be the small ones. Sardines.
Because they hold less mercury.
Whitebait, mackerel, maybe. And those are the fattiest fish, and they're also the cheapest. I mean, £2 or something for a kilo of whitebait, maybe £3 or something for a kilo of sardines, maybe if they're in season. A bit more for mackerel, but they're strong tasting. They go a long way. If you're going to make it into something, a dish, inexpensive eating.
Brilliant.
A tenth of the price of salmon. Real salmon.
Yeah, and you don't want that fake stuff in any shape or form. The other thing that I'm asked quite a lot about, and this is because I suffered very badly for 2 years of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. I can never say it. PTSD. And a lot of people ask how you come back from that. Now, I know that for me, I started with diet and nutrition, but I saw huge leaps and bounds when I started on energy work. And this is a side of you. I think you're most probably best known for your vitamins and minerals, and you've got a great web page on it. But you're also very, very well known in our circles for your energy machines and your love of energy machines. And I do think that working with energy is the most important part of dealing with trauma. I think, the vitamins and the minerals and all of that are absolutely fantastic for the health. But when you're talking about trauma, you need to get into the root cause and the energy.
It's sort of energy, but it's what woke me up. When I was 15, suddenly I must have been unconscious and I was on the ceiling looking down at my body. And I realized that I am not my body, because I was still me outside of my body floating on the ceiling. So then when I was in my early 20s, I joined like this esoteric group, and we studied hands-off healing, amongst other things. And I wasn't confident at that point, and although people said I was good at it, I didn't have the courage to actually go out and do it. And then after I fixed myself from the arthritis, sometime later I was working with a medical doctor who told me that Tesla had invented a couple of healing devices and I should buy one. So he said, you can find them secondhand. And I found one, and right away, it was easy. I had no instruction book with it, but it only had one knob, like a volume knob. It was super easy to use. And you got them to hold one rod, and you applied the other rod. It was basically, this version was called Diathermy. And the very first person I used it on, I got them out of 3 months of pain. Second person I used it on, I got them out of 20 years of pain.
Blimey.
And so I said it's about 20 years ago. And when I had the time, I delved deeper and deeper into the science of 100 years ago.
Well, the thing with Nikola Tesla is that he created these phenomenal machines, and I've seen part of your collection, and it's just crazy. I mean, so you buy them, don't you? And then you renovate them, you use parts and blend them all, till you have working machines. But there was a time in history that every doctor's surgery, hospitals would keep these machines in stock, wouldn't they, and use them?
Yeah. I mean, bear in mind that Guy's Hospital in London, they opened their electrotherapy department in 1843.
Wow.
1843. And electrotherapy had been used for a long time before that. It's just, previously it wasn't so easy they didn't have battery technology. They used an earlier system, but they're called Leyden jars. They still worked, but it became easier and easier. So by the time Tesla came along, several decades later, by 1880, he was doing his experiments with healing devices. He'd noticed that in his lab, where he was just creating very high frequencies and high voltages, that people who had aches and pains and so on were getting better. He realized that the high frequencies were curative. So he started developing vacuum tubes, glass tubes, filled with rare gases like argon, and putting a very high voltage at very low ampage, so it's not dangerous. You can't electrocute yourself. He made devices that were portable that you could cure people with. The small ones, you could cure small areas of the body at a time. With the large ones, you could lay somebody down on a bed and fix the whole body at once. So I became very interested about 20 years ago in this type of technology, and I started getting the textbooks that the doctors had. I think the earliest ones I started buying from about 1890 through to just after the Second World War, but it was during the Second World War that they rewrote the syllabuses for doctors and cut out herbs and homeopathy and everything.
Well, that had happened earlier with the Flexner report.
Yeah, but it was pretty much complete, if you like.
Yes, yeah.
But there was...
It was for me, they completed it with the 1939 Cancer Act.
Yeah,
that was like the...
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I read the Cancer Act for the UK, and it only applies to England, Wales and Scotland, not to Northern Ireland. So I rang up my legal advisor and said, do you realise that you could open a cancer clinic in Northern Ireland because it's not covered by the Cancer Act? And his answer was something along the lines of, well, you could, but how much do you enjoy living?
Yeah. I mean...
So, yeah, I decided that wouldn't be such a good idea.
Yeah, not a good idea.
But they were arresting the people who were manufacturing these Tesla devices in America wasn't so bad in Europe, but in America, if they made a claim that like it would reverse pain or something, they were closing the companies down and locking them up. So the companies began disappearing. But the period, particularly in the 30s, the devices then had been around for over 30 years. And after 30 years of development, they were pretty good at that point. And so the machines I use generally are from the 1930s. I've got earlier ones and later ones, but it was a sweet spot. And because at that point glass blowing was a really normal thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't difficult for them to blow really high quality glass. And for various reasons, the pollution of some of the early glass manufacturers, the glass that they make nowadays, I don't think is nearly as good as the stuff from 100 years ago.
I'd agree with you. And you can just tell that. Do you ever do that thing where you lick your finger and you go round the top of a cut glass and you listen to the sound? If I do that with my glasses that were a wedding present when I got married, and I do them with my mum's glasses, which were a wedding present when she got married, the sound is so different and the quality, I know the glass thickness will make a difference to that and everything, but I don't think it is as good a quality as it used to be 100 years ago or 70
well, the
years
techniques
ago.
are different. So, at one point I thought, well, why don't we just remanufacture them? But finding the glass blowers and so on is very, very difficult. So I started finding them, available. And now I work with a few people in various different countries. And whenever a really fine one comes up, I buy it and restore it. And, I don't want to take the credit for restoring. I quite like restoring them on a physical level, cosmetically, but my colleagues who are proper electrical engineers do that side of it. But we've restored some beautiful devices, and they're relatively affordable for people, and people come to me to buy them. A lot of practitioners, a lot of private individuals.
And can people come along, and obviously you're going to have one at the Health Hub, which is very exciting, so you can come and see how they work there. But can people come to you for treatments or not?
I've pretty much stopped doing treatments now, but if people want to see the devices and try them out, then they can make an appointment and come,
And now I want to come onto your magic chair. So you bought one here the last time you came for the podcast, and I've been on it every time anybody was in a lecture with Barbara or anybody else. And even then, when Barbara was talking, there were still queues for your magic chairs. I mean, the queues did not go down. And so I would kind of occasionally, because my bookstore was opposite, and I just kind of, if there was just two people in the queue, I'd run and get in the queue. They are phenomenal. Tell us all about them.
Well, you tell me what did you experience? What was phenomenal?
So what was really phenomenal for me? So the first one I did was the beach.
Yeah, I like that.
So basically, you're lying on a chair, and you've got your headphones on, and you can listen to the sound, and you've got your eyes are blindfolded, and the chairs. You're listening to a talk through meditation of what's going on while the chair vibrates in different parts of your body. And you can just, I still sometimes suffer with sciatica from my spinal fusion. The thing is that once you've got a metal cage in your back, you've got a metal cage in your back. It ain't going anywhere. And it doesn't particularly like being next to the spine. So you will get problems. It's why a lot of people, once you've had that major operation, you're kind of on a bit of a slippery slope. So you do have to take care. But just lying there and just the shaking of the chair, and I got up and I felt so good, and I felt so energized and so rested. I felt incredibly rested for 10 minutes, and I didn't sleep. Sometimes I have been known to drop off during a guided meditation, but I didn't. I could smell the beach. I could feel the beach. I felt present in the moment. But I didn't have anything major to deal with. It was just a beautiful experience for me. But you've talked about, and I've seen people, there was a lady in Scotland with MS, and you fitted her in every day. Now, that isn't enough to cure somebody, or I mean, it might some people, but not everybody. We're all different. But she told me that she did feel a lot better for it, that, she just felt a lot better in herself. But I remember you talking about the lady, motor neurons disease, I think it was.
Yeah.
Please tell that story, because it's remarkable.
Yeah. So this woman arrives in a wheelchair, a motorized wheelchair, and she talks to me, but I can barely understand what she's saying. Her friend, who translates, explains that she's got motor neuron disease, had it for 13 years, and she can barely walk, barely talk. Anyway, I treat her with a tester device. She's got lots of pain, put her on the magic chair for 10 minutes, and she has a complete emotional let go. She's crying, sobbing, almost screaming, and I'm hugging her literally for 10 or 15 minutes. And in that time, she tells me what had happened, that 14 years ago, like 1 year before the motor neuron, a bit less, her daughter had died, and she felt very badly about it, obviously. And I think at one level, she'd blamed herself. She should have been there. She wasn't good enough. She wasn't worthy. Why her and not me? I think she felt
it's very hard. I mean, I just cannot imagine. My mother lost 2 children, and I can't imagine. It's something I can't.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that manifested itself.
Yeah, lack of self-love, lack of self-worth.
Yep.
Anyway, I reckon that trauma was well and truly trapped in the cellular structure of her body, in the muscles, wherever, and her body had picked up on the message that she was worthless. And her body became that worthless, useless thing, and she let it go. At one level, a lot of the trauma was released at that moment somehow, maybe because I had my arm around her and she had somebody to talk to, and had just been on the chair, which is a trauma release tool. I've never seen anything that works for trauma release like it. And so it was amazing. So she basically got up and, to some degree, could talk much better, and was walking, 4 times, 5 times better than she was. And again, every day she got a little bit better and a little bit better. Same with the MS lady. She had a huge emotional release and was able to stop, I suppose, punishing herself, you might say.
This is it, because I believe very much that all dis-ease is dis-ease. And my sister passed with motor neurons from motor neurons. And it was just that hit a note with me when you said that she felt useless, because I couldn't understand how my sister got motor neurons, because she had a completely organic diet. She grew most of her own food, vegetables and meat, incredibly clean. But her husband, virtually every time I saw them together, I would always hear him shouting at her and telling her she was bloody useless.
Oh, dear.
And it was one of my biggest regrets that I didn't spend enough time with her towards the end of her life. But I could not bear the way that her husband spoke to her. And it hurt me so much that and to me, he was rude to all of us, a very angry man. But yeah, bloody useless.
Yeah.
And the body became bloody useless.
Yeah, so, it's not always nutrition. It can be, emotional toxicity. People, if somebody's told they're useless and they believe it, like if they go to the doctor and they say you've got 6 months to live, do not believe any prediction like that. It's interesting, of course, when they want to give you chemotherapy and they say you've got 6 months to live, how do they know? Because nobody survives longer than 6 months on that drug.
Well, some people do.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know. But I had this conversation with somebody recently, because I know somebody who had chemotherapy, and she had ovarian cancer, and the doctors had given her 2 years to live. And I argued the case that with the treatment, that was most probably going to be the case. And she died virtually 2 years to the week that the doctor had said that. And I said, how does, the body knew 2 weeks. And they said, well, maybe the doctor just knows because they've seen it before, how long you've got. I would argue that doctors know fuck all. They are, in my mind, they're drug pushers. They are taught what the illness is, what the symptom of that illness is, and then they prescribe a drug to cover up that symptom. They're not taught ever to get to the root cause. What would you say to that when people say, well, maybe doctors can say you've got 6 months to live because they've seen it before?
Well, I think you've heard my definition of the word diagnosis. Gnosis from the Greek means to know. Agnosis means not to know. So diagnosis means two people not knowing.
I love that.
And it turns out at autopsy that a lot of the diagnoses, more than half, are actually wrong. Yeah, they just got it wrong.
And yet people have such tremendous faith in the Western system.
They do, when they should actually have faith in their own bodies to repair.
I think that's changing, though.
Oh, yeah, well, people are waking up after what's happened the last few years.
Yeah, and people realise that, we are poisoned on a daily basis. We're poisoned, you talked about water and soil and, the skies, look at the blooming chemtrails going on. Do you think we can survive these? Do you think the working with the energy work will be enough to help us survive this toxic onslaught?
Well, I choose to be optimistic. So I choose to be optimistic. So therefore, the answer is absolutely yes. I have no doubt that we're going to overcome any of it. And actually, humans are incredibly adaptable.
We are, aren't we?
Amazing. I mean, when 40 years ago, when I was suddenly so ill I couldn't walk and stuff, I would have thought prior to it happening that, I would have felt suicidal being in that position. But it wasn't that way at all. I completely adapted. This is my new situation. And I was still as happy or unhappy or whatever as I had been before. We adapt. And suddenly I was used to not being able to go up and downstairs or whatever it was.
I think it's very important, though, when I, as a tapper, work with clients, and when people are dying, I think it's very important to ask people if they want to live, because if you don't have the will to live, it's not going to happen. If you have the fear of dying, then it will happen because you're so fearful that you're going to pass. And, there is only one certainty in life, and that is that you're going to die. And yet we have this tremendous fear of going to the next world. Now, maybe that's why I don't have a fear of it. And I have no fear at all. And I think it's because I just believe with all of my heart that there is a wonderful new world that we're going to when we pass and leave this world. And Earth School's pretty fucking hard sometimes. So I'm kind of looking forward to going over that. I don't know whether it's a rainbow bridge. I don't know where I'm going to go. But for me, it's I don't have any fear of it. I want to talk a little bit more about energy work, though, because there are so many energy machines out there. The first one I came across was actually the Rife machine. Now, I know that you've worked with Rife machines. You've given those up in favour of your magic chair, I believe. Well, I haven't seen you working with them.
I've just found the Tesla devices for getting people, let's say, out of pain or stopping ear problems or so many things. The Tesla device works so quickly, whereas the Rife machines generally tend to take longer. My favourite Rife machine story, I was using 4 of them many years ago. You might have heard the story before. I had this guy come and he'd got eyesight problems, he was in pain, and he got brain fog. So I wired him up to 4 Rife machines at once, and at the end of an hour, he was totally fixed. Pain gone, eyesight fine, brain fog gone, and I'd forgotten to switch the machines on at the wall.
Oh my God! Power of placebo.
Absolutely. So I wasn't about to tell him that I hadn't switched them on. I didn't think that would be a good idea. But so I observed firsthand that actually how incredible the mind is. And, when I learnt self-hypnosis, again, I saw just ridiculous results. I mean, who would think you could turn pain off? But you can. You just got to know how. So, one of the best things I ever learned was hypnosis. Self-hypnosis, and just the clever use of words. Hypnosis sounds like a dodgy thing, but to learn the power of words.
Well, we've just spoken about my sister and, the power of words, and we've seen it time and time again with the works of Dr. Emoto, and, every word has a meaning. It's why they're called a spelling, because they are a spell. I've got to ask you about something that I have so many discussions with, which is the Medbeds. Now, everybody in the natural world that I know of talks about the Medbeds. I don't think any of us have ever seen one. Do you think they exist? Do you think that there are these wonderful beds coming that will heal us?
Well, I go to quite a few of the worldwide conferences, which are the cutting edge natural health ones. And I go looking for Medbeds. Never seen one. People have shown me photographs that look like something out of a sci-fi movie. But, I go to, the big one, which was out in Las Vegas last year. There were, I think, 4,000, no, that's right, there were over 400 exhibitors showing over 4,000 different devices. And there were machines that spun you around and you name it. That's where I found the magic chair. But there's nothing like a Medbed. I think it's hope porn.
Oh, the thing is, it's feasible to make one. I mean, we have...
Is it?
The technology that we have now is so extraordinary that I just find it a little bit frustrating that they haven't got these Medbeds. But the nearest thing I have seen to a Medbed is your magic chair. And I'm just so grateful that, you've brought them to the UK and you're bringing them to the Health Hub. That is going to be a very exciting day. So, get yourself down there. There are still tickets, so get yourself down there. Come and go on the Medbeds. Come and meet Clive. Come and talk about vitamins and minerals and everything that you need to know, because you are a mine of information, Clive de Carle. Tell our audience where they can find you.
Well, my supplement company is clivedecarle.com, but underneath this, in the description, Philly is going to have a link, so you just click through that. And then I have the Secret Health Club, which is secrethealthclub.com, and there'll be a link. And, when I first got closed down by the government for telling the truth in too vocal a way, and they took me off YouTube and stuff, I started a private members club, secrethealthclub.com, and over the last 10 years or so, we've put together a series of videos and articles and so on, which you can go on the A to Z and look up Alzheimer's or whatever it is, and go straight to what I feel are the key bits of information. So you're not overwhelmed by hundreds of videos to watch, and we've tried to put them in basically in order of what we think are the most important things to treat X, Y, Z, and hopefully get your health back. So secrethealthclub.com is where to go for information, and clivedecarle.com for the supplements. And people can write to me about the devices, info@clivedecarle.com.
And with the supplements, you only put on that supplement webpage what you're allowed to put on by
exactly.
government rulings, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, if I was selling water and I made the claim, water hydrates you, because I haven't done a double-blind test, EU or UK approved, to prove that water hydrates you, as opposed to a placebo. That's 2 years in prison for making a false health claim, something like that.
Yeah.
The system is extraordinary.
You can get the same for a tweet now as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, quite unbelievable what's going on in this crazy world. But I do believe that there is a new world coming, and I'm so excited and grateful that you're joining us at the Health Hub at CNM. Get down there, guys. Come and meet us. come and pick our brains, come and listen to us. We're both talking and all the other wonderful people. Come and meet practitioners and come and start your journey, because as you know by now, the doctor of your future is you. Clive de Carle, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Philly.